Welcome to the podcast, Stories from the World of Science. Our mission is to explain science in a simple and fun form that is open to all.
Hey everyone, so I'm really excited for this deep dive. You sent over some really thought-provoking stuff about science communication. And it's not just about how to make a cool infographic or something. It's something way deeper.
Right.
This article from Sci-Hi's, The Essence of Science Communication, really digs into it. And it basically says what we think of as science communication is only half the battle, right?
Absolutely. What's so interesting about this article is that it kind of flips the script.
Oh, okay.
We're so used to thinking about, how to get science out there.
Right.
But this article is hold on. What if we're not even sure what we're sharing is rock solid science to begin with?
Yeah. It's like rushing to spread the word about a recipe before we even checked if all the ingredients are fresh or something.
Exactly. The article calls this crucial first step, identifying the real scientific consensus.
Okay.
And it's often where things go sideways.
Yeah. Okay. So give us the lowdown. How do we actually do that? Especially in a world swimming with research papers and conflicting headlines and everything.
Right. It's about going beyond the surface level. Think about it. How often do we see a catchy headline about some new study and we're
oh, all the time.
Immediately share it with our friends
Guilty as charged.
without actually digging a bit deeper.
Yeah, but let's be honest. Who has time to read every single research paper that comes out?
You're absolutely right. It's not about reading every study. It's about understanding that one study isn't the whole picture.
Okay.
Think about it like this. Imagine a study comes out saying coffee is bad for your heart.
Oh no, my morning routine just shuddered.
Right. But then if you dig a bit deeper, you might find a whole slew of other studies that suggest, moderate coffee consumption is actually linked to benefits.
Oh, okay.
And that's where this idea of scientific consensus comes in. It's about looking at the weight of the evidence, not just one isolated study.
So it's more like being a science detective, right? Looking for clues and considering different perspectives and putting together the most accurate picture possible.
Precisely. And that's where that first step, identifying that real scientific consensus, becomes so important. And it's not just about looking at the quantity of the research,
right,
but also the quality and who's conducting it, who's putting it out there.
Have piqued my interest. You're talking about those different roles within the science communication ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
The journalists, the PR folks, the communicators themselves, all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the article points out how easy it is to kind of conflate these roles.
Right.
Which can lead to a lot of confusion, especially when it comes to trusting the information.
Okay, so let's break that down for our listener a little bit. What are some of the key differences our listener should be aware of?
Okay, so think about it like this. You've got a new study about the benefits of a certain type of exercise, right?
Yeah.
A PR person working for a fitness company might, use that study to promote their latest product. Their goal is to get you excited, maybe even a little swayed.
Right. They're trying to sell you something.
Exactly. Now, a journalist might report on that same study, right? Presenting the findings in a clear, factual way, ideally with some context, but their primary goal is to inform, to report the news.
Got it. Different objectives, different ways of kind of framing the information.
And then you've got science communicators who ideally are doing that deeper dive we were just talking about,
right,
assessing the study's methodology, considering its limitations, looking at it in the context of, other research out there. They're like those detectives we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Separating the hype from the real deal.
This is really making me think about all those times I've shared an article on social media or whatever without really even looking at who was behind it,
I think we've all been there. But that's why I think this two-step approach is so powerful.
Yeah.
It gives you, the listener, a framework for evaluating information, whether it's about coffee, exercise, or even something like, climate change.
So it's not just about blindly trusting what we see, but taking that extra step to say okay, who's saying this and why?
Precisely. And that ties into another point the article makes, which is the role of science communication in exposing bad science.
Yes. The idea that it's not just about like amplifying the good stuff, but also like calling out the bad actors, right?
Yeah.
It made me think of that saying, sunlight is the best disinfectant or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Shining a light on flawed research, questionable claims. It's all part of painting that accurate picture, right?
Yeah.
Of what we know and what we don't know.
Which brings us to a concept from the article that I found really interesting and maybe even a little surprising. It's this whole idea of the deficit model. Can you refresh our listeners' memory on what that is exactly?
Of course. So the deficit model is basically this assumption that people are wary of science simply because they don't understand it.
Okay.
So the solution, according to this model, is just to cram more facts into their brains.
Right. Like if we could just explain it better, everyone would be on board.
Exactly. But the article argues that this model is way too simplistic. Like it ignores all these very real ways in which values, experiences, even like personal identities shape how people interpret information, scientific or otherwise.
Totally. It's like that old saying, you can lead a horse to water.
Exactly.
Right.
You can't force someone to accept something as true, even if you back it up with a mountain of data.
Right.
And you know what? The article actually takes it a step further and critiques the alternative to the deficit model too.
Oh, this is getting juicy. Tell me more.
So the alternative is often called the public engagement model.
Okay.
And it emphasizes more dialogue.
Yeah.
More back and forth between scientists and the public.
Yeah.
Sounds great in theory, right?
Yeah. Who wouldn't want more open conversations about science and stuff?
In principle, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But the article argues that both models, as well-intentioned as they are, miss that crucial first step we keep coming back to.
Right.
Which is rigorously identifying what the scientific consensus actually is.
So it all comes back to that solid foundation.
Yes.
Because if we're not all on the same page about the science itself, then the rest is just noise, right?
Precisely. And that's why I think this deep dive, this whole conversation is so important.
Yeah.
It's giving you, our listener, the tools to cut through the noise. Whether you're, scrolling through social media, reading a news article, or even just chatting with friends.
Right.
About the latest findings.
It's like you said earlier, we've all fallen into that trap of sharing something without really checking the validity of it. But knowing what questions to ask, being a bit more discerning, it can make all the difference, right?
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
And speaking of making a difference, the article ended with a bit of a challenge, something for all of us to chew on. It focused on communicating science, outward, right?
Yeah.
To the public.
To the public.
But what if we applied this two-step process, this critical thinking to all the information we encounter in our lives?
Oh, I love that.
Right.
It's like taking that science detective hat and wearing it everywhere we go.
Yeah, exactly. So dear listener, next time you stumble upon a shocking headline or a bold claim or even just a friend who's passionately sharing their latest conviction, whatever it might be, remember the two steps, right?
Right.
What's the source's angle, and have they really done their homework?
What a fantastic takeaway.
Yeah, it's about leveling up our BS detectors, not just for science, but for everything. And with that, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive.
Yes.
And remember, keep those curious minds engaged and those critical thinking caps firmly in place.
You just listened to the podcast, Stories from the World of Science, written by Sasho Dolines.